This story begins in a quiet neighborhood on the outskirts of Madison, Wisconsin, where tree-lined streets and modest homes created a sense of calm that hid the complexity of many lives inside them. I was 17 then, a high school junior struggling to keep up in a world that seemed designed for people who learned faster, spoke louder, and adapted more easily than I ever could. School had always been difficult for me, not because I lacked interest, but because my mind worked differently. Concepts that others grasped quickly took me time, patience, and repetition. For years, I carried the weight of being labeled slow, even though deep down I knew I was simply learning in my own way. My life began to change the summer I was introduced to Betty Collins, a professional learning mentor hired by my family to support my education at home. Betty was not a teacher in the traditional sense, nor was she related to me by family ties. She was a certified educational support specialist with years of experience helping students like me build confidence, structure, and independence. She lived in Milwaukee but traveled weekly to Madison to work with several students, and I was one of them. When Betty first walked through our front door, she carried a canvas bag filled with notebooks, colored folders, and neatly labeled planners. She greeted me with a warm smile that didn't feel forced or rehearsed. She spoke calmly, clearly, and with a respect that instantly made me feel seen. Instead of asking about my grades, she asked about my interests. What did I enjoy doing when no one was watching? What subjects made me curious? What kind of future did I imagine for myself, even if it felt unrealistic? No adult had ever asked me those questions before. That was the moment I realized this experience would be different. Our sessions took place at the dining table every weekday afternoon. Betty believed that learning didn't have to feel like punishment. She rearranged the space so it felt comfortable and welcoming. We used visual schedules, short breaks, and real-world examples to make abstract ideas easier to understand. Math became about budgeting for groceries. Reading became about understanding stories that reflected real emotions. Writing turned into journaling, where I could express thoughts without fear of being judged for grammar or spelling mistakes. Betty never rushed me. If I struggled, she didn't sigh or look at the clock. She simply adjusted the approach. When I failed to understand something, she reminded me that difficulty was not failure, but feedback. Slowly, my frustration began to fade, replaced by something unfamiliar but powerful, confidence. Outside of academics, Betty focused heavily on life skills. She taught me how to organize my time, set achievable goals, and communicate my needs clearly. We practiced simple conversations, job interview questions, and problem-solving scenarios. She emphasized that intelligence was not measured by speed, but by persistence and growth. One afternoon, while walking through a local park near Lake Monona as part of a lesson on observation and mindfulness, Betty shared her own story. She talked about growing up in Cleveland, Ohio, where she struggled academically and emotionally due to undiagnosed learning challenges. It wasn't until a mentor believed in her that she found her path. That belief, she said, was something she now dedicated her life to giving others. Hearing her story changed the way I viewed myself. For the first time, I saw a future where my challenges didn't define my limits. As the months passed, changes became noticeable. My teachers at school remarked on my improved focus and participation. My grades slowly increased, but more importantly, my attitude toward learning transformed. I began raising my hand in class. I stopped hiding my notebooks. I even volunteered to help classmates when I understood something well. At home, my family noticed the difference too. I was more independent, more communicative, and less withdrawn. Betty encouraged these changes but never took credit for them. She reminded me that the work was mine, and she was simply there to guide me. One of the most meaningful moments came during a school presentation event where students shared personal growth stories. Standing on stage in the auditorium, looking out at rows of unfamiliar faces, my hands shook. Betty sat in the front row, not smiling or nodding excessively, just watching with quiet confidence. That steadiness grounded me. I spoke about learning differently, about feeling invisible, and about discovering that support doesn't mean weakness. When I finished, the applause was gentle but sincere. In that moment, I felt proud, not because I was perfect, but because I was honest. As summer approached, our sessions gradually shifted toward preparing me for adulthood. Betty helped me research community colleges, vocational programs, and support services. She emphasized choice and autonomy, reminding me that success looked different for everyone. Together, we created a realistic plan for my next steps, one that respected my pace and strengths. On our final scheduled session, we returned to the same dining table where it had all begun. Betty handed me a neatly organized binder filled with strategies, notes, and encouragement letters she had written over the year. Inside the front cover, she had written a simple message: "You are capable. You always were." Saying goodbye was not easy, but it wasn't sad either. It felt like a graduation of sorts. Betty reminded me that support doesn't disappear, it evolves. The lessons she taught me were not just academic, but foundational for life. Today, I look back on that chapter with gratitude. Learning beyond school wasn't about textbooks or test scores. It was about patience, understanding, and the power of someone believing in you when you're still learning to believe in yourself. Betty Collins was not family by blood, but she was a guide, a mentor, and a turning point in my life story. This is not a story about perfection. It is a story about progress. And sometimes, progress begins with one person who chooses to see potential where others see limitation.